Please rise for a reading of the Holy Gospel. This morning's reading from the Gospel is taken from the Gospel of Luke, chapter 18, verses 9 through 14. Jesus spoke this parable to those who believed in their own self-righteousness while holding everyone else in contempt. Two people went up to the temple to pray. One was a Pharisee and the other a tax collector. The Pharisee stood and prayed like this: I give you thanks, O God, that I am not like others, greedy, crooked, adulterous, or even like this tax collector. I fast twice a week. I pay tithes on everything I earn. The other one, however, kept a distance, not even daring to look up to heaven. In real humility, all the tax collector said was, "Oh God, be merciful to me, a sinner." Believe me, the tax collector went home from the temple right with God, while the Pharisee didn't. For those who exalt themselves will be humbled, while those who humble themselves will be exalted. This ends the reading of the Gospel.
Let us pray. May the words of my mouth and the meditations of all our hearts be pleasing in your sight, O God, our rock and our Redeemer. Amen.
Amen.
I was a rising star in college. Granted, it was a really small Christian liberal arts college, and you probably never heard of it, but it was the only college I applied to, as it was affiliated with my denomination at the time, the Church of the Nazarene. I loved this college, and it loved me. I was hired on the spot by the admissions department to be a road recruiter my freshman year. I was elected class chaplain. The same year, I became a licensed minister, which means at the age of 19, I was legally able to give the blessing for a marriage. Scary thought, isn't it? I worked in public relations for 2 years. And by my senior year, I was asked by the Dean of Students to join the university's Judicial Council. Of course, I accepted. I was becoming a big deal in this small religious world. But unbeknownst to me, I was on my own road to Damascus. Nowhere in the Bible does it say, do not dance. But my tiny college and the entire denomination frowned upon dancing as it's something that might lead to licentious behavior. Dancing wasn't the only societal ill my college fought against. There was also going to the movie theater, even for G-rated movies, visiting dorms that housed the opposite sex, or if we absolutely had to, we could sit a Bible's width apart from each other in the common area. They used to say, don't smoke or drink or chew or go with girls who do. No gambling, no playing games that involve decks of cards with faces on them, including Old Maid. No piercings, no tattoos, no open-toe sandals. Men were encouraged to keep their hair above their ears. Women were encouraged to wear their hair and their skirts as long as possible. We received discipline and fines for not attending chapel, and curfew is at 10. So basically, I attended college in the 1940s. All these rules were enforced by a lifestyle covenant which each student signed. And I, being a member of the university's judicial council, enforced all these rules. I took part in the suspension of students who came in after curfew. I took part in the suspension of students who drank champagne at a wedding. And yes, I took part in the suspension of students whose cars were seen parked at a movie theater. In my mind, at the time, I was waging war against what I thought was a worldly empire. But as I reflect upon my time on judicial council, I realized that I was a part of another empire, perhaps crueler and more unjust than the first. As it says in Romans chapter 4, for the law brings wrath. As I look back on these experiences, I can't help but think about Saul, breathing threats and murder against the disciples of the Lord. And Jesus asks me, why do you persecute me? When I graduated from college, I left that denomination and searched for nearly a decade outside Christianity for a faith that was more rational until I finally made peace with Christianity again. Then after my mother died, my father met a new companion who was also widowed. For most people, their wedding day was a celebration of this new marriage. But I couldn't help but notice there was a table of Nazarenes located next to the bar. Okay, this can go one of two ways, I thought to myself. I was thinking, wow, this is really magnanimous of Nazarenes to be at a reception where there is an open bar and people are going to dance. I thought to myself, if I were still on that judicial council, I wouldn't be here. Well, maybe I would, and then leave just to show them that I disapproved of their dancing and their drinking. But here they were. They came. I wondered if Nazarenes had perhaps evolved. So it shouldn't have surprised me. I shouldn't have let it hurt me. But when the music started playing and people started dancing, even before the meal, the Nazarenes got up and left. They left my father's wedding reception just because it involved dancing. It was difficult for me to experience this boycott at a family member's wedding reception because I saw myself in them. To my shame, I might have done the same thing 10 years earlier. To my shame, I saw with my own eyes religious zealots inflicting upon my family the same spiritual trauma I must have inflicted upon others. And scales fell from my eyes. At the early stage of my life, I was like Saul, the righteous, the defender of empire, the slayer of Christians before his conversion. Okay, maybe I was not a murderer, but I'm not perfect. As I illustrated, I have been a perpetrator of spiritual violence against other humans. And not just spiritual violence, but I have been selfish, self-righteous, malicious, rude, stubborn, hateful, unforgiving, and just plain wrong. If you think about it, I was just like the pious persons in today's gospel reading. God, I thank you that I'm not like other people, thieves, rogues, adulterers, or even like this tax collector here. I fast twice a week and I give 1/10 of all my income. I wonder if anyone here can relate to that story. Has anyone here ever been self-righteous, malicious, rude, stubborn, or unforgiving? I wonder if we are able to look at this story about Saul and not sit in judgment of him, but instead consider how we have been just like Saul. How easy it is to badmouth the other political party. How we take for granted our own privilege. How we have turned our backs on people in need. How we have aligned ourselves not with the love of God, but with an empire. But hear the good news. God didn't give up on Saul, the murderer. God saw that Saul was going in the wrong direction, and God sent him in a new direction. Might God not also do the same thing for us? Speaking of going in the wrong direction, when I first moved to Connecticut, I wanted to see all the historic sites. So I get the address, punch it into MapQuest, print out the map, and I'm on my way. This was before GPS, obviously. So I'm driving down the streets of New Haven, and every 3 blocks or so, I would see a street sign indicating where I was. And usually by the time I see the next street sign in view, I would realize that I'd already passed the street I was looking for 2 blocks ago. Then I moved to the Greenwich area, where the residents pride themselves on concealing their street numbers. I even saw a segment on News 12 about how prospective city ordinance requiring that all homes display numbers at least 4 inches tall. Apparently, ambulances and police were unable to find their destinations, and people were dying because of it. But nope, the people of Greenwich don't want house numbers on their pretty homes, which makes getting around difficult for Hoosiers like me. So I finally cashed in my credit card rewards and got one of those GPS contraptions, and I was able to get where I needed to go, and in a timely manner. Punch in the destination and it takes me there. And it is so forgiving. A few times I've been unable to get into my turning lane, so I keep going straight and I miss my turn. The woman's voice, I call her Claire, says in a very sweet cadence, "Recalculating." Of course, I'm flogging myself in agony because I missed my turn. Probably added another 3 minutes to my commute. I'm about to go bonkers, so I'm mad at myself. But my GPS speaks understandingly to me, and with a single word erases my anxiety. Recalculating. And Claire takes me back around the block. She never gets angry with me, never adds to my misery. That voice is like salve to my bruised ego. Recalculating. Friends, it doesn't matter if we are headed in the wrong direction. Nothing looks familiar anymore. Nothing feels right. We are filled with dis-ease. We are unhappy. We may even be so wounded that we begin wounding other people. Because there is a God who pursues us. God seeks after us. And we are left on our own road to Damascus, about to do or say something we regret, and we lose our senses. We are paralyzed and recognize our own hunger. Our lives are turned upside down. And then grace appears. Someone like Ananias decides he will put himself in harm's way for us. Someone believes in us to give us another chance. Some twist of fate opens doors that we weren't able to open, and the hate and fear and selfishness fall like scales from our eyes. It's as if God is whispering to us, recalculating. Some of us can relate to Saul in this story. I know I can. But some of us might relate more to Ananias, who went out of his way to help a murderer. And to those people, I would say the following. Excuse me. I was reading an article in The Humanist. It talked about how a different magazine, The Christian Century, and its readers really blew it on social media. There was a news article about a gentleman who had called 911 because he was engaged in a dangerous private activity. The gentleman calls 911 because his life is in danger. I believe everyone should have the right to call 911. But the comments in this article in the Christian publication indicated that some people believe that certain human beings do not have that right. These people bring it on themselves. We can't be soft on those people. Interesting. This use of language suggests to me that the behavior was somehow less of a problem than the gentleman in question. who must be part of a group that is targeted somehow. So, to whom was the article referring when it cited these people? It was a Roman Catholic priest. So, with the whole vow of celibacy thing, I get it. Perhaps he was not living into his highest ideals. But the comments from the progressive Christians were scathing. I am glad he was humiliated. You deserve whatever embarrassment is heaped upon you when your hypocrisy is revealed. And priests are terrorists and con men. The point of this article is not that this priest is a great human being. No, he's probably on his own road to Damascus. The point is that we can and should get angry when we discover hypocrisy, but anger is different from hatred. These comments were hate-filled. They failed to recognize how much in need we all are. They turned this gentleman into an object, not a complex human being like each one of us. The priest probably shouldn't have been the target of the media, and this article probably shouldn't have gone viral. But he was, and it did. And here, in religious community, we need to talk about what it means for us. Just as I am a spiritual refuge from the Church of the Nazarene, perhaps some of you, or all of you, are refugees from elsewhere. We have trod our own roads to Damascus and were hurt, and by some miracle have found our way here. Each one of us, I'm hoping, was greeted by someone like an Ananias. We are here in the spiritual community because we were welcomed, shepherded, nurtured, and, by the grace of God, made whole. This gentleman, who happens to be a priest, needed an Ananias. He needed someone to feed him and clothe him and love him. But he did not find an Ananias from Christians, from anyone, in the comments section of the news page. Love is our responsibility. Defines how the followers of Rabbi Jesus are to conduct themselves in this world. Who else is commanded to love whomever they see? I want to close by telling you a story about one of my hospice patients. I'll call her Patty. The first time I visited Patty, she shooed me out of her room. What? I said, I'm a chaplain. I don't have time for this. Well, are you coming back? Only if you'd like. My first several visits to Patty were just like that. She was a very hardened woman who had to have a fascinating story. Most people do. I communicated to her by whiteboard since she couldn't hear, but she could talk all right. And she kept shooing me out of her room, but asking me to come back. She was ambivalent about me for some reason. Then one day, after I slowly earned her trust, she shared with me that she was distrustful of religious professionals because she had bad experiences with organized religion. She told me that she had children out of wedlock, and since that time has been unable to participate in communion in her denomination. She was like the tax collector who could not even look up to heaven to pray. How long has it been? I'm looking at her, she's in her late 80s. It's been decades, she said. Would you like me to bring you communion? Yes, but I couldn't. In my church, you could. So I talked with the nurse. They approved the sacrament to be taken. And the next time I saw her, I brought with me bread and wine. I blessed the elements, and we took them together. This hardened woman in her 80s began to soften. Her voice changed from a harsh, raspy whine to a lighter, freer hum. Her tense body began to relax. Her eyes filled with gratitude. Her countenance became radiant. Recalculating. Then she shooed me out of her room and said, "Thank you, Father." That was the last time I saw Patty awake. Sometimes God's love is incomprehensible, is foolish, is counterintuitive. It's like casting our nets on the other side of the boat. And God pursues us. God, who worketh through us, gives us grace and gives us peace and gives us mercy to do God's work on earth as it is in heaven. All of us have been like Saul at one point or another. And all of us can be like Ananias. We're not all called to welcome murderers into our home, no. But it doesn't have to be that dramatic. In fact, God's work is usually very simple. We exist to break bread together as equals with people the church has traditionally rejected here at Metropolitan Community Church. Spiritual refuges like me, my hospice patient, and all the people I wounded in my previous life. We can reach out to Muslims, Jews, Sikhs, Hindus, and say, the divinity of me recognizes the divinity in you. We can reach across the aisle and end partisan gridlock. We can provide food and shelter to those in crisis. We can get involved in outreach. We can decide that our creed shall be kindness, especially to those who are unkind to us. We can intentionally go out of our way to make friends with people of different races, in different social strata. And we can be renewed by God, and allow the scales to fall from our eyes and be made whole again. This is the promise of today's readings. May it be so.